Hello and welcome to another video with me, Christian Rauchenwald. Now in today's video we are going to answer the question if Donald Trump is still a billionaire or not. Most likely you at least already heard about the article the New York Times published regarding Donald Trump's tax returns, where they over countless pages go into detail about how much debt he has on his properties and how many of his loans are due within the next couple of years, making it easy for people to believe that Donald Trump is actually broke. However, I'm sure that most people did not read the whole article and did not read between the lines, because in that whole article the New York Times pretty much only mentions once that the net worth cannot be deducted based on the information that they provide here, and that's a crucial bit of information, and it led to most people misinterpreting the whole article and not exactly knowing if Donald Trump is still a billionaire or not. Thankfully, there are also people out there like Dan Alexander, who works as a Trump reporter at Forbes and also recently published a book detailing how Trump turned the presidency into a business, who went a little bit into detail and focused on the question that most people really care about, if Trump is still a billionaire or not. Now I'm going to answer that question real quick so you don't have to watch countless minutes of video, and after that I'm going to explain a few other things that I think are important. In order to understand, or in order to determine if Donald Trump is still a billionaire or not, we cannot simply look at the number of loans and debt that he has gathered within his business, but you'll also need to look at the revenue those businesses generate and also at the value of the properties. Think of it this way: if you were to buy a house and for that purpose you take a $500,000 loan from your local bank, but your house is also worth or valued at $500,000. Now theoretically you would look at $500,000 in debt, but actually you have zero debt, because you could always sell your house, maybe even with a profit, and you could cover the debt with your assets. So it's important to understand the difference between assets and liability and then to add those things up. And unfortunately the article in the New York Times focused mostly on the liabilities and debt that Donald Trump owes to others, and doesn't really consider the assets that he owns, and therefore it paints slightly the wrong picture. It leads people to believe that Donald Trump is actually having financial trouble. Now, as mentioned, thankfully there are people like Dan Alexander who published an article on Forbes 2 days after the original article was published by the New York Times, and details the difference or the sum of all liabilities and assets as far as there was information available to him, and that paints a clear picture. Yes, Donald Trump owes more than $1 billion, but on the other hand he owns more than $3 billion in assets, so overall he's still a billionaire with more than $2 billion in net worth. Now usually I wouldn't make a video about topics like this, because I know there is a heated discussion between Trump and Biden supporters, or Trump and anti-Trump people, and usually content like this will lead to a lot of valueless comments below the video. In fact, I recommend that you take the time to read both articles, starting with the one from the New York Times and then reading Dan Alexander's article on the Forbes website. You can find links to both of them in the description down below, so you actually have all the facts and you know what the New York Times article was actually trying to accomplish. Because in my opinion, the New York Times article was not about answering the question if Donald Trump is broke or if he's still a billionaire, but it was more about shining a spotlight on Donald Trump's shady accounting practices. Like, for example, the fact that Ivanka Trump, while she worked as an employee for the Trump Organization, also received countless payments for consulting services that she allegedly provided to the Trump Organization, showing us that Trump most likely in that case paid her consulting fees to reduce his taxable income. But that also doesn't mean that those consulting fees haven't been taxed. Yes, Donald Trump didn't have to pay any taxes on them because he declared them as an expense, but obviously Ivanka Trump has to declare them as an income or as revenue on her tax filings, and therefore she may have had to pay taxes on those revenues. As somebody watching US politics from the outside since the day Donald Trump started to run for president, I just don't understand how magazines like the New York Times can publish articles that are simply misleading and paint the wrong picture. There is literally no need at all to write or publish an article that misleads people into thinking Donald Trump would be broke and he's not a great businessman. There are enough things Donald Trump has done and said before he became president and during his presidency that make it easy to show what kind of human he is, that he doesn't care about other people, that he only cares about himself and enriching him and his family and so on, that he doesn't care about women, that he basically treats them as walking sex toys, if you want to think about like that. So there are enough facts out there that show what kind of person he is, and that should show everyone that it's a bad idea to vote for him. Now, I'm not saying that I'm a Biden supporter, but what I'm saying is that I would vote for any opponent against Donald Trump. There's literally very few exceptions on that list, simply because when I look at what Trump accomplished during his first term, all I see is that he helped rich people make more money, tries to kick poor people off health insurance, and at the end doesn't really care about his fellow citizens at all. Now, that's just my opinion, and you may disagree with me on that, but I think it's important that when we talk about things like Donald Trump's tax returns, that people know all the facts. So you actually have a complete picture about what's going on, and you will see that it's not about answering the question if Donald Trump is a billionaire or if Donald Trump is broke. It's simply about spotlighting his accounting practices that lead to him paying almost no taxes at all. Now, last but not least, I also remember during the 2016 election, during a debate with Hillary Clinton, Hillary pointed out that he doesn't publish his tax returns and so on, and Donald Trump says it makes him smart basically to pay almost no taxes at all. And I completely agree with that. Every entrepreneur and every business owner out there does whatever is within his power to pay less income tax. That, however, also doesn't mean that that person does not pay taxes at all, because a person like Donald Trump owning that much property for sure has a ton of other taxes that he has to pay, and I'm quite certain that on average he ends up paying way more taxes than the average citizen pays during his whole lifetime. Obviously, I'm not talking about his income tax here, but most likely if you would dig deeper, you would see that in terms of property tax and other taxes that he has to pay, the sums are way higher than what the average person pays in their entire lifetime. And last but not least, you never should forget that with all his businesses, he also employs hundreds or thousands of people, and only because they are employed by him do they actually pay taxes on their incomes. So there's also taxes that are only paid because Trump runs his businesses. And while he is not paying those taxes himself, indirectly, if he wouldn't run his business and employ those people, they wouldn't pay those taxes. Maybe they would have another job, maybe they would rely on government assistance. It's hard to say. But overall, what I'm trying to say is, if you are the New York Times, you cannot go out and write an article that's so long that most people will not bother to read the whole thing and then just focus on liabilities and leave out all the rest, painting a completely false picture. And let's be honest about it, if you would have the possibility to pay less taxes, you also would do it. It's a sad truth in life that we as humans usually mostly care about ourselves and our close friends and family, but we don't care that much about the rest of the world. And that's why most people, when they have the chance to pay less or get more money for themselves, they will take advantage of that. It may not be the nicest thing about us as humans in general, but it still is more or less human nature with only a few exceptions. Thanks for watching this video. If you haven't already, make sure to check the links to both the articles on the New York Times and on the Forbes website, so you actually have a bigger picture, a fuller picture of Trump's tax situation. And if you have any questions or any kind of feedback whatsoever, just leave a comment down below. Thanks for watching. See you in one of my other videos. Till then, bye bye.